sure know where I've been, hanging on the promises and songs of yesterday. And I've made up my mind, I ain't wasting no more time. Here I go again, here I go again. Though I keep searching for an answer, I never seem to find what I'm looking for. Lord, I pray you give me strength to carry on, 'cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. Here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone, and I've made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time. I'm just another heart in need of rescue, waiting on love's sweet charity. And I'm gonna hold on for the rest of my days, 'cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone, and I've made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time, but here I go again. Here I go again. Here I go again. Here I go. Cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone, and I've made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone, 'cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known.
Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say. Burn all the bridges, don't ask forgiveness, walk away like I'm someone you hate. Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. the way.
If it's over, so fuck it. Just don't act like my love wasn't nothing. Like I wasn't the one you was holding that night, telling all of your secrets and hugging. Guess you right, it's too good to be true. Was a point, all I needed was you. But shit, time after time, I just fussing and fighting. It's time that you do what you do. And it's cool. Mama said it was fish in the sea, I got lost in the pool. Knew it was coming, I watched how you move. How you turn your back on me and leave me to lose. Remember the text, how you said that you do. Said that you never leave, we would fight till it's due. But as it went on, I was fighting for you. Since the text turned green, why the fuck it ain't blue? Guess you done and I get it. Said you stay and you wanted my name and you left, so I'm guessing that you never meant it. Said you try and hold on cause the love was so strong, now I'm standing alone in this kitchen. Singing sad songs, but I'm knowing that this shit don't last long. If you leaving, then leave cause your bag's gone. But just know you can never come back home.
Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say. Burn all the bridges, don't ask forgiveness. Walk away like I'm someone you hate. Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way.
If you say that you done it, no take back. Said you fell out of love and I hate that. But see me, I was stuck like a drug, really feeling for love and somehow I can't shake back. When you walked out that door, I was hurting. All the dreams in my head, you was perfect. You remember the very first time that we killed and I reached for your hand where the nerves at. Time to pass, but shit, that's what it do. It be times I be sick sitting thinking about you. It was death do its part. You gave me the blue, really played with my heart. Left me lost in the field, like this shit was fair game. But you made up the rules. On my heart, left a scar and a bruise. Hope that you can stand on all the shit that you did. Cause I'm done, y'all finally through.
Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say. Burn all the bridges, don't ask forgiveness. Walk away like I'm someone you hate. Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once? I am one of those melodramatic fools, neurotic to the bone, no doubt about it. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me. It all keeps adding up. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Am I just stuck? I went to a shrink to analyze my dreams. She says it's like a sex that's bringing me down. I went to a whore. He said my life's a bore. Choke with my white cause it's bringing her down. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me. It all keeps adding up. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Grasping to control, so I better hold on. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me. It all keeps adding up. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Like a son?
question, Adam, that I tell all my end user friends when they go visit a trade show or they get a demo from a manufacturer. I said the first question that you as an end user should ask the vendor or the manufacturer demoing the product is, hey, manufacturer, where do you suck?
Absolutely. I think it's a great call out because I tell you, the people who are successful in getting my business are those who are honest, right? And when you challenge them on something and say, so you're saying this, but I really know how this works. And what about this? And I'm like, yeah, that's true, right? That honesty goes a long way. I'd rather buy a B product from someone who's honest with me than something that's supposed to be an A+ product from someone I can't trust, right?
We ran weapons detection systems, walk-through weapons detection systems on every secondary campus. And we did it, every time kids come to school, every morning, every time you went outside and came back in, right? And you see all these crazy articles about how these weapons detections and lines wrapped around schools. Well, that was because there's a people problem there. There was an implementation problem there. They didn't implement the product right. Stop blaming the product for your failures. And that's what we get into in the security world is they want to say, well, it's a product problem. Well, 99% of the time, it's not a product problem. It's a people problem.
All right. Welcome. My name is Taylor May, founder of SVIP, Security VIP. Welcome to SVIP Live. We are back with another live interview, and I've got a really good friend for this week's live interview. Before I introduce this gentleman, though, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors, XSponse. There's a QR code shown on the screen here if you guys want to check out more what XSponse does. They have a really cool technology offering for schools and ISD, so go check them out. But welcome, first and foremost, to SVIP Live, guys and girls. This is a live series that I feature every single week, or try to every single week, with end users in the security industry. And this specific end user that we're featuring today is Chief Rick Francis, who is the Chief of the Department of School Safety and Security for Seminole County Sheriff's Office. I've known Chief for quite a few years. He is an expert when it comes to school safety and security, especially out there in Florida, man, when you've got 70 plus schools and all those kiddos coming through schools. But Chief, my friend, welcome to SVIP Live. How are we doing?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Man, it's I've had you on the podcast. I think we first met was probably at Zero Eyes on the weapon detection stuff, man. But ever since, I feel like we've just been best buds ever since.
Absolutely.
But man, you're a leader, dude. We already have a couple questions, man. That already came in. That's just how popular you are, I guess. No one wants to see me because they're tired of hearing my voice, dude. But you're a popular dude. But before, man, I introduce those questions and kind of dive into our discussion today. Why don't you give our listeners, man, some context and some background about who you are?
Born in Central Florida, born and raised. Tried to walk on, playing a little bit of ball after high school, and that didn't work out. So I ended up going into the military, and I was fortunate enough to get some good experience in the military as a flight and combat medic. Got out of the military with the hopes of joining federal law enforcement, particularly the marshals. Unfortunately, they weren't hiring at the time, so I just happenstance landed into a finance job, and eventually, a few years later, I ended up making it to VP of a Fortune 100 finance company, and enjoyed it. Made a lot of good money. Unfortunately, it's corporate America, and really lost the passion. I had that passion still to serve, and I just got tired of corporate America and the games they're playing. So I went, joined, a local law enforcement here in Central Florida, just outside of Orlando, Seminole County Sheriff's Office. Started out as patrol, moved up to investigations and domestic security. And of course, got promoted a few times over. And then, ironically, in 2015, as fate may have it, our superintendent reached out to our sheriff and asked if we would be interested in assuming the responsibility for school safety and security. And of course, the sheriff's like, absolutely. A few hours later, I was standing tall in his office. And I guess he didn't like the look of my face because I was like, I don't want to go over there and work with those people. At the time, we had like 63 schools. And he, of course, assured me this was an opportunity of a lifetime. And he was exceptionally passionate about protecting our youth. And I literally picked up my laptop and then over the weekend thought about it real hard. And I was standing tall over there at the Educational Support Building and started as a one-man show. There was a civilian who had that role for 6 years prior. Honestly, don't know what he did, but he was retiring, and this opened up an opportunity for us. And we had a clean slate, and the rest is history. I just I look back, and things happen for a reason, and it's I thank the sheriff every day for that opportunity, and the superintendent for having the forward thinking to realize that, hey, his job was to educate and run a school district, not to handle school safety and security, which he was not an expert at.
Well, it's almost like a blessing in disguise, Chief. I mean, you got a school district that is not small by any means out there in Seminole County. It's like you're dealing with a 5-school district like Santa Fe did here in Texas, man. You got 70 plus schools and probably some admin buildings, some other buildings you got to take care of. And so they needed a proactive leader like yourself to take over that posture. And it's really cool to hear you say again, and I've heard this from other safety and security leaders, that it's always nice when a superintendent gets out of the way and kind of lets you do your job. Right? Because
that's one thing that I've been asked over and over again, what we were so successful. And honestly, he put us at the table. He put me at the table and made school safety and security a number one priority.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's obviously shown everything that you have done for Seminole County. And we'll talk about some of those things you have done for the district. I know school's out. I know this is typically the time where maybe you do some refreshes and some improvements, obviously before the kiddos come back in the fall. But we did have our question come in. Our first question, this gentleman, Chief. I'm going to highlight the question. And again, for my listeners, if you have a question for Chief Rick Francis, I will ask it and highlight it just like I am for this question. But our friend Jeff Kelly, what his question is, what is missing that should be added to student staff safety matrix given all the changes and advancements in school safety?
That's a really great and loaded question. I mean, obviously, I think our biggest resource on the campus is our students. And I think some people lose sight of that. When I inherited the school district, we had zero technology. The only person that locked the school down was the principal. Of course, we didn't have an officer and deputy for a single school. But to answer Jeff's question, I mean, I think it's important to have this complete understanding that, this issue when it comes to school safety, especially school safety shootings, been going on since 1764. And if you don't learn from prior incidents, I mean, for example, if you look at every single after action report for every major incident, and communication comes up, and not having the ability to declare an emergency and get the right resources on the campus to handle the problem is, it's a tragedy. It continues to happen over and over again.
One of the things, Chief, that I've spoken with Chief Stout, who's the chief of police for Putnam City Schools in Oklahoma. The intro video before we went off live, you saw Ron Self, who's also one of the leaders I like to learn from in school safety. He talks about obviously proactive technology, but the other flip side of that, man, is just the people problem. He said that people problem a while. Like, you can have great technology, and technology is advertised. Now, granted, there's always a caveat there. People that promote technology that says, hey, this is 99 or 100% accurate, half the time they're full of shit. But to his point, man, he is right. It does take the right policy and procedures with the right people to put that kind of technology in place. So maybe talk about some of the proactive technology you put in place, but also the procedure behind it with the right people and the processes to make sure that technology is working to your advantage.
So when we first started out, I mentioned a few minutes ago that we had zero technology. My first order of business, put an officer and deputy in every campus, and then and making them highly trained, subject matter experts, part of the fabric of the school. And then, a month or two into it, I really started realizing from a scenario or an incident that happened where I arrive on campus, and the principal and our new added officer on the campus is having a discussion why it should or should not lock the school down because of an off-campus incident close by. And I'm like, why are we having this conversation? Just lock the damn school down. Then I realized as a high school, once they finally made that decision, when I went around to make my rounds, I realized that only half the high school was recognizing that they're on lockdown. It was a large campus, my largest campus. And so there's a sporting events, baseball practice, for example, going on, and they didn't realize they're on lockdown. So that's one of the biggest early lessons that I learned is like, I have got to put the ability to lock a school down at everybody's fingertips. And more importantly, make sure everybody's aware there is an emergency going on and how that looks and stuff like that. And to your point earlier, it's all about people. I can tell you when I started with zero budget, then I got a little bit of money, and then I would literally partner with principals and say, hey, we want to do X, Y, and Z, access control or We inherited, 14 different video managements, analog cameras. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And, you have to start somewhere. And we would, say, hey, listen, I got a little bit of money, you got a little bit of money, let's partner together and do it. And I realized real fast that, the fish rots from the head first. If you don't have the right person in the driver's seat at the school or in school safety, you're spinning your wheels. Some are more concerned about early on about how their courtyard looked instead of adding proper fencing or whatever. So I found myself working with principals that are a little bit more proactive minded, and eventually we've just immediately took over about a year later. We took over all purchasing, and so we didn't have the spirit systems being put in and stuff like that. But that soft panic button for me was a game changer. The ability to lock a school down with notifications not only on that campus but going to my team, the PSAP and stuff like that, and then more importantly having that interoperability. And this is long before the incidents like Parkland and stuff like that. And then I started looking at weapon detection, of course, enhancing my video management systems, and then on and on. And then even some of the soft things, we added comfort canines to some of our elementary schools, and then later on weapon detection canines. So it's just looking at this from a holistic standpoint. Thankfully, I look at school safety from many different lenses, and I think that's helped me kind of shape what Seminole County looked like when it came to school safety.
Well, one of the things I liked what you said there, Chief, is you involved yourself with the principals and people that you needed to involve yourself with to make sure that safety and security was at the forefront, despite having no budget initially, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, especially in today's range. I think one of the other things that I like to bring up is obviously having this kind of culture in place with the student body, right? If the students feel comfortable enough to say, hey, something looks wrong here, they should bring that up. But you have to establish that kind of relationship with the student body, because honestly, they're your eyes and ears on the ground when you can't see things, right?
It is the best resource anybody has on campus is your students. And especially if they have a trusted adult on campus, a way to report anonymously, a tip or concerning behavior, threatening behavior, concerning behaviors. And we have success story. We average this year, we just ended the school year. We're in summer school right now, but it's, obviously very minimal, but we're over 1,000 threats that we worked. And some of that is simple as a kid saying something inappropriate to a little bit more severe stuff. And we have success story after success story about kids giving us information that we've been able to get involved with some concerning behaviors. And almost 100% of the time, once we wrap around services, mental health, etc., we're not getting repeat offenders.
Yeah, that it's a huge element, and I point to what Chief Stout told me probably a couple of weeks ago. Man, he said, the reason why we've been successful and lucky here is because we have engaged our student body. We have built that culture. Because he'll tell me the same thing. He's like, social media has increased the amount of incidents at our school, and he's right. There's social media things that kids get bullied online. They said they're going to make threats, and sure enough, there's things that happen. But it's good to have that kind of environment, because you're 100% right there. And I will contest to this, man. Like, I love the fancy football stadiums and all the practice facilities. Like, they're nice there in Texas, man. I would have loved to play for Allen High School. That stadium's beautiful. But at the flip of the coin, it's like, hey, like, if you have issues at that high school, why aren't we putting that kind of amount of funding towards safety and security? But wait, Chief, and you've said this before, there has to be blood on the ground before we actually do something. You said that countless times, and that's always stuck on my head, man. But you're right. We always try to prioritize other things versus the own safety and security of our children.
Yeah, it is ridiculously after we have these incidents, and you just, there's many to choose from, how much money is thrown from the federal, state, and local government at these school districts after these incidents, instead of spending some money ahead of time. And listen, I love technology. I wouldn't say I am a technology geek by any stretch of imagination, but technology, especially school safety technology, has been a game changer for us. It's allowed me, and I spend my rule is 80-20. I spend about 80% of my time on those soft skills, the culture and climate. And I've seen it over and over again that these kids, they don't wake up on a Monday and become an active killer that day. There is a pattern of behavior, a pathway of violence. And as long as we stay in tune, they have a trusted adult to go on campus and feel part of that school, it's less likely that we're going to have problems with them.
There's a couple questions that I want to get your take on. They're kind of hot takes that I want to get your take on. But we have another question, actually two questions that came in, Chief. This question's from Blake. I want to highlight it here for you. Chief Francis, what technology sets your schools apart from other districts, and what other products do you feel might be needed in the near future?
Great question. So just a quick history about Seminole County. We started, we were the first, and this is not bragging, but the state of Florida to add, a deputy on the campus, sheriff's office responsible for school safety and security, soft panic app with multimedia interoperability, weapons detection, threat assessment management, digital reunification. The list goes on and on and on. Again, this is not bragging. It's just I had a vision of and a clean slate that I felt was important to work through. Now, after Parkland, everything I just named is now mandatory in the state of Florida, with the exception of weapon detection. And the good thing for me is now, originally when I first started, we had from grants to operating capital, I was paying for all this. And as mapping's another one, that once after Parkland happened, now we started seeing the state of Florida get a little more serious about school safety and security and started funding some of that. And with the exception of my weapons detection system, I'm almost fully funded by the state when it comes to these extra things I've added. But again, that's only makes up a small percentage of that. To answer the question, what's the future look like? I assure you, as the day is long, within the next 5 years, we're going to have a drone attack in a school with a payload. And right now, today, we don't have abilities to completely mitigate that circumstances. You're seeing it already. Of course, we saw a recent one abroad. You were seeing it, cartels use it. So I'm really concerned that that's something that we haven't 100% figured out yet. Is someone just drive by a school, launching a drone with a payload and flying it during class exchange or lunch period during one of our larger campuses or high schools, or et cetera.
That's interesting, Chief. I haven't heard that come up yet around the drone environment. I will tell you there is a company out there, and again, I'm not getting paid by this company, but I will tell you who it is. Airsight. They're based here in Dallas, actually, but it is against nefarious drones and the weaponization of drones. So it actually detects drones that are in the proximity of your location. And so if you want to see a demo, happy to make that introduction. As always, man, I try to find the latest and greatest technology in the space. But that's you're right, man. I think about football games. I think about outdoor track events, because even here not too long ago, Chief, about a month ago, we had a stabbing at a track meet. That was a weapon that was brought in at a track meet. And so I want to talk about weapon detection. We're getting questions left and right here, man. let me just point this next question. Blake, thank you for the question. This question, Chief, is from Marty. Marty's actually a fellow end user. He works for OG&E, Oklahoma Gas and Energy. So Marty, giving you a shout out there, my friend. But his question is, how do you evaluate new technologies before implementing them? I think I know the answer here, but Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we beta test everything. There is not a single product that we have not tested before we roll it out. And the biggest thing for us, sometimes there's a lot of red tape in the public schools, and the how you do things, as far as RFPs and RFIs and stuff. But for me, is I want to kick the tires. I want to kick it when let's use the example of Taylor mentioned weapon detection, where we met early on, and we first put it into one high school, about 20 cameras, tested it with the vendor, and then we blind tested when the vendor wasn't expecting us to be testing it. So for me, it's also testing it, during times where you're not expecting, like for example, after hours for us, I was real surprised. My weapon detection system, and I get a call out, like 7 a.m. from the company saying, "Hey, we didn't wake you up for this alert, but it looks like it's law enforcement clearing one of your schools," and it was. But that's, to me, it's satisfaction. It's working. Like for example, my mass communication, my soft panic app. We've had thousands of activations, and it's never failed us. And it's just we just made sure that and I've learned of course, coming from law enforcement into the K-12 world, of course, limited budgets and stuff like that. But I learned real quick to get the right people along with me in that seat, as far as when we're looking at products, from IT to facilities and you name it. And then someone, like you said earlier, Taylor, someone comes in, hey, this is 100%, it's going to detect every weapon, every knife, never. It's not going to happen. And of course, we do our homework too. I mean, right. There's a great network for us in Florida. We're all tied in. All the school safety directors are all tied in by email and text group. Somebody's doing something different or whatever. We're constantly sharing that information. And of course, you get a little bit at conferences and stuff like that.
Well, I think it's always important when it comes to technology to obviously bulletproof it with the end user versus a lab or a recommendation, especially if it's new, man. Like weapon detection a couple years ago was brand new. No one really validated the technology, and we talk about visible versus concealed. They're two different kind of technologies, but still, when you want to get real world practicality, it's helpful for both obviously the end user, but also the manufacturer to make sure that, hey, there's some holes here that we need to fix based on our testing in the field. And I think, Chief, you might agree with this. Anytime you do beta test technology or something new, it's always easier to get things approved when it's actually in your backyard. Then you can go tap the person next door and say, hey, look at this technology, what it's doing for us right now in this trial, right? Then they can actually see it, in person. So
Absolutely. But one thing with the technology, especially early on, like for me, for weapon detection, back in 2017, when I started down this track, I couldn't get any federal funding because it was just too new. Machine learning AI was just really not. They're scared of it. The price tag was high, and no one wanted to touch it. Now it's a little bit different story. And I'm confident, at least in the state of Florida, within the next few years, I'm hoping that's covered as far as through state grants as well.
Well, you would think Florida or, a progressive state, obviously Texas, and I think Florida's a little bit more progressive when it comes to safety and security, but you would think they would make a mandate about having every school have some kind of weapon code or weapon
I
detection.
think they will.
So I think it's coming. Just like
I
fire
think
code. Everyone has fire
Yep.
code. We talk about that a lot.
Even though we haven't lost a child in K-12 fire since 1958, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other story.
When do schools burn down now, Chief? Like, come on. A couple more things here. Jeff mentioned facial recognition. Are you using face rec at all at the school?
We can't. State of Florida, you cannot. Now there's some AI technology with video management systems that we can use, but right now, currently, there is some of us are pushing some legislation regarding, if we have a significant threat, an individual that is legitimately considered a high level threat, that we can add them to this. But right now, as it stands right now in the state of Florida, we cannot use biometrics for students or parents of students.
Interesting. Yeah, I know I worked for a facial recognition company, AnyVision, back in the day. It was really cool. And Santa Fe has it, Texas City has it. And obviously it helps with the expelled students or people that are not supposed to be on campus. But I understand there's obviously conversations around privacy and Big Brother and shit like that, which, maybe people have issues with. But if you explain it right, it actually works in your favor.
Well, if you explain the why, and I think you look at red light cameras. I mean, when that first rolled out, there's a whole bunch of problems with it, and Big Brother. But there is some validity to it, and I think a lot of companies now have learned some lessons when it comes to facial recognition and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I've got a really good question from my good friend David Tyndall. He's a product of Seminole County, so this is going to hit home. Before I hit that question, though, Tyndall, you won't mind me asking this question. This is my hot take, Chief. There was a conversation back in the day. I don't know if it's how recent it was. Maybe it was long ago, but there was a conversation about equipping teachers and staff with weapons. So I would love to hear your perspective, and we're not going to, beat around the corner here. Florida is a red state. And so as a red state, I mean, how do you approach that kind of topic around, teachers carrying?
So Central Florida is very unique in the aspect that if I have an incident on any of my 70 campuses, there's going to be 100 plus LEOs, if we allowed it, to be on that campus in a matter of minutes. So I'm 100% opposed to arming teachers for us. We have an officer and deputy at every single school. They're highly trained. We do about 20 different training things from them, from simple de-escalation all the way to CQB work with our SWAT team. I mean, my officers and deputies in the campus, they're ready for that God forbid day. I've seen over and over again, especially because we're constantly pushing the envelope when training, where we have what we consider blue on blue situations where cops, you get them, excited, and they're looking for people with guns, and the first person coming around the corner with a gun is liable to get shot. Not to mention the de-escalation issue. I can tell you, our officers and deputies are trained, and I'll give you a scenario. You walk into a classroom, you get called in there as an officer or deputy on a campus, and there's a kid picking up a chair and throwing it around and stuff like that. We're going to de-escalate that situation. It's not going to be considered a lethal threat. Now, you arm a teacher and they get hit in the head with a chair from a student, they might consider that a lethal incident, and then discharge. There's also huge issue with weapon retention. We've seen over and over again these guardians and stuff like that, these rent-a-cops in some of the schools, where they're, pawning their service weapon. There are, issues regarding retention. Where are you going to put it? Where are you going to store it? I just think it's a bad idea for us in Central Florida. Now, if you're, for example, you're a rural area and you have no law enforcement on site, or the response is 20 minutes, that's a totally different issue,
Right.
But I just, and even in the state of Florida with our Guardian program, yeah, there is a pretty robust training, but nothing takes away from time on the street, learning, dealing with different situations and stuff like that. And we don't, we're not taking an officer from the academy and throwing them into school. It's just not how we operate. Some may do that, but ours, we look for obviously a little bit more seasoned individual. It's not a retirement zone for me. So these individuals are, they're highly trained and there's a lot expected out of them. But I just don't think it's good for us. I've seen too many mistakes happen, and I just don't think it's a good idea.
Well, I actually agree with you, Chief. My mom taught for 30 years, and I think as a true teacher would tell you, I'm just there to educate the younger generation. I don't want to ever use a weapon or harm a kid. That's never in their mind as a teacher or as an educator, right? So I think that's a good point there. And obviously, different scenarios call for different solutions, and obviously, being a rural environment, it might make more sense to look at that approach. But someone as large as you with access to all these SROs and technology, and speaking of that exact scenario about maybe a kid throwing a chair or saying something ugly or nefarious to a teacher, again, I'll give a plug to Xbox. They have a device to actually detect that and alert that. That's an emergency device, right? So, and I think that's another thing too that I like about Xbox, Chief, is maybe you've dealt with this before, but maybe sometimes a special ed room or maybe a different room where a class or a kid says something degrading to a teacher or a threat to a teacher, and obviously it's not recorded because you don't have cameras inside the classroom. But now this, like what Xbox has, they can actually record that if needed, if in an emergency like that, which obviously validates the teacher's position in a situation like that. But have you experienced that before, Chief, with kids?
Yeah, we've had those scenarios come up. Information is power. And from I've also if we had a God forbid incident in one of our schools, I'm quarterbacking those response and having instant access to video management, cameras and stuff like that. If we have an incident happen right now, I don't need the school to do anything. We can do it all from our dashboards and our laptops or computers, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, I want the school to be locked down. I want the officer and deputy on that campus to handle business. I don't want them, directing traffic or anything like that. I just want them handle the business, be part of fabric school, and be that subject matter expert. But information is power.
Amen. I could not agree more. All right, Tyndall. I waited long enough to highlight your question. I don't even think it's going to show up on the whole screen here, Chief. I might have to read it on the side here. But this is David Tyndall, a good friend of mine. I think you might have met Tyndall in the past or spoke with him, but public safety expert, lives in Seminole County, so he's a local. First of all, I was a product of the Seminole County school system, and my daughter was also a product of Seminole County Public Schools. So I want to say thank you for keeping our campuses safe and secure. Second, other than the students, I have to go to the side here. Other than the students, what piece of technology has contributed to your success in school safety?
Technology-wise, the mass communication, the soft panic button. I know there's. We've also tested some wearables and stuff like that. That piece of technology for me is the best. It's just because of what I inherited. And nothing against the civilian who had it before me, but and we've done this over and over. We've shown it early on where, using technology, school safety, like a mass communication tool, to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on versus the same similar incident happened and just the amount of time that's wasted. For us, it's speed to resolution. I can't, if you look at the Uvalde incident, that individual climbing a fence and getting on that property, although not the best scenario in the world, we can't prevent some of that, like that happening. Now, you shouldn't have been able to get into school and et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that I can assure you is based on all the technology we have and the training and support, if I had a God forbid incident, I'm going to respond better than most and recover, more importantly, better than most anybody.
Chief, this is a question that just came to the top of my mind, but do you feel like you have the safest school district in the state of Florida?
I don't want to say that.
I try, guys and girls.
It's funny. I will say this. After Parkland, you're well aware, 3 weeks later, Florida had legislation, pretty robust legislation that was, drafted. And it's every year they've touched on it and cleaned it up a little bit. But we're locking classroom doors. We've been, threat management, officer deputies in every school, sheriff's office responsible for school safety. We've been pushing the envelope since 2015. What was rewarding to me is after Parkland and all this sweeping legislation came down, we were compliant day one. Again, it's just, I had a vision. I felt, from my experience, what I think we should have, and listen, it didn't come easy. I'll give you an example. Locking classroom doors. It took us about a year to get that really, really done. Explaining the why. And I'll give you one funny story. I was visiting a school campus, and I noticed on the school resource deputy's desk, there was a fishbowl full of what looked like magnets with writing on it. I said, what is this? And she said, oh, laugh, that's teacher so-and-so playing games. I said, what game are we playing? And they said, well, they're using the piece of magnetic to defeat the locking mechanism. The door's locked, but they're putting that there to defeat the locking mechanism. So, of course, I grabbed the fishbowl, crawled. My buddy was the executive director of high schools at that time. When we went and saw that teacher, needless to say, it was activity was stopped. But it's things like that. And sometimes, like the soft panic button, explain the why and all the things that happen behind the scenes when they push that button, from going to the PSAP. For us, a patrol officer driving down the school that has no affiliation with the school during a day can get the alert in about 1.5 seconds. And across the nation, urgent calls like an active shooter in a school takes anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds to dispatch. I can get it done in 1.5 seconds. I mean, that's being smart about technology. And again, realizing that it doesn't resolve everything. I mean, there's not a single piece of technology that's going to stop an active killer situation. Now it may help us recover and respond better, but so it's just realizing that, to our point earlier, I put a lot of emphasis on our students and our faculty, make sure they're prepared for it and recognize threatening or concerning behaviors, etc.
At one point, Chief, there was some controversy whether or not SRO should be inside schools. There's a big topic, which I thought was asinine, even to bring it up, because I'm like, why not have an SRO at every single school? Now, I get it. Funding is an issue. Budget's an issue. But, sometimes again, building my earlier point, building that culture, the SRO can help build that culture for you around students and safety and security,
There's nothing more amazing to see, to sit back and watch our officers and deputies in the schools engaging the students, being part of this. We got guys and gals that are coaches, mentors. Right. I mean, the list goes on and on. I've seen our officers sitting in those little elementary level, small tables and chairs, coloring with kids, serving food. I've seen it all. One thing that, this is probably the hardest job I've ever had, but the most rewarding. It's being responsible for the most vulnerable. And that's how we look at it right now. It's about 68,000 kids that we're responsible for and 10,000 employees. It's something that we take very, very seriously, and we never rest. We're always constantly trying to learn from prior incidents, averted incidents, and what we can do better and continue, like you mentioned earlier about the athletics, after school events. I mean, that's the hot spot. We're seeing research is showing that these incidents now that were occurring in the school inside now are moving more to the envelope and extensions of the school. Why? We've done a better job with access control and everything else, fencing, et cetera, and everything's moving out. So we have to change our game a little bit.
One of the things, Ron Self, again, I'll point to him. What he said to me is like, look, all this technology is great. All these innovations, great. Drones are cool. Love drones. LiDAR technology, LPR, weapon detection, face rec, deep fake technology, all really innovative stuff. But he's like, if you don't have the fucking basics, you should not be doing any of that stuff. And it's locks on doors, Chief. It's locks on doors.
Right? I've gone as a consultant to areas in the United States with a 2-day presentation about best practice, lessons learned, case studies, and have to completely abandon everything I was going to do because they're not locking classroom doors, or their officer that's in the school doesn't have means to get access to all the doors and buildings, and analog cameras or cameras that aren't working. It's like, you're just asking for problems, and you ask the employee, hey, what is your active threat response model? I don't know. It's like or substitutes that can't get, are not giving keys to their particular room, and just the list goes on, and it's frustrating because how many incidents have to occur over and over again with some common denominators that people aren't learning from.
Right. Right. Let's play this scenario. But before I bring this up, I want to highlight, Jeff made a comment. Just want to highlight it real quick, Chief. Chief Francis and I started this program together 10 years ago, 3 years before Parkland. So obviously takes time, right? But here you are today, and you're in a very, very healthy position. And again, and I'll say this too, Chief, like everyone's not perfect. Like you can put everything in place, you can still have issues, right? Policies, procedures, technology, you can still have gaps. But I think what you guys have done, you guys have always been pioneers around hardening the posture, creating that culture, testing new things that could be of interest and help you guys obviously, secure the district, moving forward. But I guess my question, Chief, going back to that stabbing that occurred here in Dallas, Fort Worth at that track meet, are you putting weapon detection at the stadiums or outdoor events, or
Yes.
How does that work?
For that reason, and it's nothing because of that incident. Florida unfortunately has had several incidents at football games. We call them large-scale events. Anything over certain numbers, and we're deploying other assets. We've also, looked at other, means to help secure these type of events. From visitor access and how we're handling visitors to even players and fans and stuff like that. The problem is that there is a sense amongst a lot, especially K-12, that once the school day is ended, that bell to bell is ended, we still, especially for us in Florida with AstroTurf and stuff like that, we can have fields being used till 10 o'clock at night. Students, faculty, players, etc., around our campuses, for lots of hours, outside the bell to bell time. So for me, school safety is a 24/7 job, and it extends even to bus stops, field trips, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. We see school districts that hire a school safety director, maybe because they're prior military or prior law enforcement, and that's all good, emergency management, whatever. But just because you're a prior cop doesn't mean you're going to do well in this world. I can tell you, I went to early on 2015. I'm making my rounds and stopped at one of our private schools that was interested in putting a deputy in. And they're telling me, well, we've already had one of your guys look at all of our emergency response plans, said they're good to go. I said, well, do you mind me looking at it? Looked at it, it's like 8 pages. And I'm like, you mind if I take this and give you some more? And it ended up being the off-duty detail deputy that was there. Nothing against them. But he had no clue about school safety and security and the nuances and the technology available and what works, what doesn't work. And what I've also learned is what works for me in Central Florida may not work for someone in the Northeast or Northwest. Right. It just varies. We've and listen, I'd love to say that we're perfect. We start some things, and I'm the idea fairy sometimes. Hey, I want to do this, I want to try this, and it doesn't work. One of the biggest things getting back to students is I used to get out there and do videos and all this stuff, and I realized that after Parkland, I got a little bit more traction about people like, oh, this guy's not full of crap after all. But honestly, I took my message, gave it to a kid, and let them say it. One of the students on there, and it's amazing how much those things like that make all the sense in the world. I'll give you another just a crazy example that one of our guys did. The Comfort K9 is one example. The other ones, we took the elementary mascots and did an active threat thing with using mascots for the K through 2-year or second grade group. It was a remarkable idea, and it's funny as crap, and it works.
You're making it resonate is what you're really doing, man. You're resonating with the students, and that's honestly what you have to do, man, around these problems nowadays. So here's my scenario, Chief. Everyone advocates and everyone bitches about, I don't have funding, I don't have access, I don't have bodies. Let's say you're new in your position, safety security director or whatever, chief of police maybe, whatever your position is, but you have no funding. You've got no bodies, no SROs. What are you doing day one, phase one, to make sure that you do create some kind of push towards a secure and more safe environment for the kids?
Culture and climate. I'm going to talk to the staff and I can use examples or whatever the case would be, but I'm laser focused on making sure that kid or kiddos feel connected to that campus and a trusted adult on that campus, preferably law enforcement and or faculty member, whatever. But I want to make sure that there is a personal connection. And it's interesting. Can you go on to a campus of 600, 700 kids and guarantee that every one of those kids has one adult on campus they feel they go to, or a means to do anonymous tip reporting, whatever the case may be. But I would be laser focused. And, ironically, when I first took this over, the sheriff pulled me in on a Thursday or Friday. I had the weekend to talk about it. Of course, I came out of domestic security, on SWAT, all this other stuff. And I'm thinking terrorist, that's my function, and of course, I get educated and start learning and, look at every single incident that's happened in the schools and realize, well, my threat's coming from within more than likely 95%, 98%, depends what survey you look at or research. So if our kiddos are likely, or past kiddos going to be likely my active threat, and they know my processes and procedures, it's a game changer. And we've been fortunate until Parkland to be able to keep a little bit of the stuff behind the scenes. We're protected. Our emergency response plans are protected. But for obvious reasons, like events like Parkland and Santa Fe and stuff like that, parents would want to know, hey, what are you doing? And so we've had to come off a lot of the technology that we were kind of keeping behind the scenes a little bit, because the average person doesn't know we're running weapons detection. They're not, with the exception of our sporting events, they're not walking through what they consider standardized, upright, metal detectors.
Right. No, one of the things you mentioned, speaking of technology, I pointed this to Scott McCartney. You know him. He used to work for the Spurs. Now he works for FIFA World Cup, leads safety and security for the World Cup 2026. Pretty cool job he's got there. But he said, Taylor, if people would just look up from their phones, we wouldn't have as many incidents because everyone's so glued to their phone. And so just imagine, Chief, you guys walking down the street, everyone's looking at their phone, whether it's dinner, whether it's at a store, but you just said, hey, you looking nice today. Oh, it's a great day today. Or, comment with their appearance. Like that ability, that psychology to look up and say, you know what, maybe that person's having a bad day and maybe they're not going to do what they wanted to do because you said hi to them. It goes a long way. It goes a long
Absolutely.
way.
Absolutely.
I want to counter that too, because I spoke with Chief Stout of Putnam City Schools in Oklahoma, and he talked about maybe Oklahoma taking phones away at the school where kids can't use them. Are you seeing that at all with kids saying,
we've had that, and there's been legislation to stop that as well, to make sure that kids can't use phones. Listen, first of all, there's technology out there that can put a geofence around a school, and you could dictate what direct messages or apps are being used and what are not coming in. So a kid could be all day long on their phone, and you could block 90% of it and only allow your emergency stuff to come through. I've learned, again, from doing things, that information's power, age and developmentally appropriate. Like for my high schools, I want my kids to have it. I want them to have it, because if I'm doing a lockdown and it's a real world incident, I push the information out to of course, our faculty first, students, parents, etc. We're big about messaging. Let's just tell them, so that prevents them, calling their mom or texting their mom and dad trying to get to the school, which they're not going to be able to do because we've got to close down. And just try to eliminate some of the. And one thing that I've last few years I've really concentrated on is the recovery phase. And I'll give you without naming the school incident or whatever, but we've even seen it as late as a couple months ago, an hour after the active threat is completely neutralized. The school's considered safe. You got kids walking out with their hands up, law enforcement with their rifles slung. That's not recovery.
Right.
And we have to, as school safety leadership, the second that threat's eliminated, we need to move to recovery phase. And that's the mental health aspects. And so it gets into like having a phone and being able to message that, hey, we do have a real world event going on. It's isolated, whatever case may be. It's off campus, it just calms that things down a little bit more, we've seen. So we're going to constantly battle that, and let's face it, if you do not allow kids these days to have access to phones, they're going to get left behind. That technology, let's face it.
I mean, my first phone was in I think 5th grade, 6th grade. No Nokia, man. So I've had a phone since then. When it was 10 cents a text message back in the day. You're right there, man. So, Chief, walking through the challenges for 2025. Obviously, you're in summer mode. I know there's summer school going on, but kids are not fully on full capacity right now. Maybe walk me through what you guys are currently going through right now as far as upgrades or advancements you're looking at, and maybe just some challenges that you're seeing for 2025 and maybe the next school year.
So as we speak right now, I have a group of safety patrol folks in my team up in DC doing safety patrol tours. They go through, because they're part of the safety patrol for fifth graders in our elementary schools. We take them up to DC. It's a first class charter buses all the way up to DC.
Nice.
Say great locations, tour all the great things. So that's going on currently. We are just wrapping up what we consider wraparound training is going to look like right before we go back to school. We spend about anywhere from 10 days to maybe 12 with our officers and deputies, getting them back into the school mode, because some of them are taking time off now. We're just transitioning to optics on our pistols with our school safety folks, which I think is a game changer for us. But one of my biggest emphasis this year has been back to the basics, back to student-led initiatives. We have a big, robust training when it comes to front office folks, and also the athletic directors. We really want to enhance them, and not only just give them some basic training, but some certifications along the way when it comes to large-scale incidents and planning and stuff like that, the K-12 world. But we're constantly, this is the time where we're just getting contracts finalized, reviewing emergency response plans, updating those, and all that good stuff, all the fun stuff that we typically do during the summer.
Well, it's a very important point you made there, Chief. Safety and security is always a shared responsibility, regardless of your title, and that can carry over to athletic directors, coaches, principals, teachers. And it points me again to another industry, casinos. I've obviously made a killing and a living on casinos, but all the casinos I speak with, man, they're like, you know what, Taylor, even though I wear the director of surveillance or the VP of security hat, like I ensure that operations and marketing and player development and guest experience and HR, they have a place for safety and security, and they actually communicate with me around what's happening. So I think that's a very, very important topic and point to bring up, especially what you're doing with schools. And speaking of that, man, I mean, going to school now is 9-day difference, man, between when I went to school. I mean, shit, you got mental health going on, you got active aggressor shit going on, you got cyber bullying going on. I mean, that's another thing too, Chief, is the cyber element. I don't know how much you delve into that, but like the cool thing now is to hack things for kids. Like they want to hack things, so
Crazy.
It's like, how do you prevent that?
We've
Again, it goes back to the culture.
Yeah, we've had some cases, unfortunately. I mean, if you think it'll happen, it's going to happen. I always said I was going to write a book of all the crap we've dealt with in school safety, and it's been, you name it, we've dealt from, teachers doing stuff inappropriate to kids, of course, saying stupid stuff and doing stupid things, video voyeurism. I mean, you name it, it's happened.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's kids, and kids do some stupid stuff sometimes. Hell, if we got in trouble for half the stuff that you and I did when we were kids, we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now.
That's true, and obviously technology and social media has just made that amplified with more of the challenges. Jeff made a comment here again, Chief, just to read it out loud. There are so many inexpensive remedies for school safety. Start with people that then add what you can afford. Bring in Homeland Security or Secret Service. Doesn't cost a penny, and they will come.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would just say, Mike Retrango, him and I talk a lot about this. Everybody thinks there's an expert in school safety now, so just be careful who you're dealing with. I've gone behind consulting groups that are tied to a certain product and they're pushing something. And to your point earlier, listen, if you're not locked in the K-12 world, if you're not locking your classroom door, if you haven't established anonymous tip reporting, you haven't figured out mass communication, don't be worrying about these other shiny coins, the weapons detection and stuff like that. And of course, I'm a big fan of all that stuff. But if you're not doing the basics, you're wasting a lot of time. And I love challenging experts. I love people that think they're an expert in the field. And again, there are some wonderful people out there that are doing amazing work for the right reasons. I mean, I'm not opposed for anybody making money in this industry. Now it's school safety technology is over a $3 billion industry now. It's amazing. But at the end of the day, it gets down to culture and climate, self-harm, threat assessment, concerning behaviors. Those are really what, at the end of the day, where we live and breathe, or should be.
I love when people call themselves like self-proclaimed expert. And my favorite word, Chief, is influencer. I fucking can't stand the word influencer, man. And I've battled with that too, man. Some people called me an influencer in the past, which whatever. But it's I love when people call themselves experts. Another question or comment or a question from me. But we got about 10 minutes left, guys and girls. So if you have a question for Chief, please drop it in the chat. So good quality questions so far in comments. I do appreciate the engagement. A question from me, Chief, to you. What is one thing you wish more people understood about the work you do? And maybe you tie that in with like parents, maybe just the outside public you have. Maybe they see something on the news about Seminole County, and maybe they have this impression about Seminole County because you put XYZ product in. What do you want more people to know about you and the work you're doing?
Well, I think to understand it's a 24/7 job. Now, again, I have, almost over 300 people between my crossing guards, my officers and deputies in the campus. So this is a team project. I mean, this is, from our principals. We have some amazing principals and safety team members, students. It is a group effort, but school safety is a 24/7 job. And I can't tell you how many nights that we're getting texts or, especially I have one dedicated person that handles all of my, the stop gap for all my threats. And, I mentioned earlier, over 1,000 threats. I think if the average person realize, one thing that we try to pride ourselves in is understanding, I come up with some ideas, and I'll give you one example. Of course, we've been locking classroom doors for a long time. And I used to have this procedure policy that once we close that door, there's no opening it unless it was, all clear and all this other stuff. So if Johnny was out running the restroom and knocking on your door, and you're in lockdown, you're not opening the door because you're literally risking the lives of the other kids in there. Well, because we have a lot more technology and based on information intelligence, if I'm in building 1 and I know the threats or the alleged threats, in building 10 on the other side of the campus, why would I not open that door? I'm a parent myself. I'm going to open the damn door. Right. Now, if there's a noise stimulus or something like that, that's a totally different situation. But I'm also know that I'm risking the other kids that are in that room. But that was one example where I made it back in 2015-16 when I first took over. And as the years progressed, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And I'll give you another example. I had it set up where after the God forbid incident that we expected our principals to be these superheroes, put on capes, help us navigate the recovery and response to these incidents. But after Parkland is sitting there, Jeff was with me many of these times down in Parkland, seeing through the commission hearings over and over and hearing these parents talk and stuff like that. I realized that principal that I'm standing up to be this superhero in these situations is just as much as a victim as the kid on the ground that's not able to recover or reunify. So I changed how my mindset developed these like district care teams that will come in these situations, take over the whole entire operations. I'm not going to excuse the principal off the campus, but they're not going to be making a lot of critical decisions during these incidents. But also understanding the fact that once these incidents do kick off, my job is to get it resolved, mitigated, and then move that to a recovery phase and, getting things back as best we can to a normal day. And with that, understanding that mental health issue that, unfortunately we see over and over again gets neglected in these incidents.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a sign when it comes to mental health, and I think now it's got more of a seat at the table for that. It surprises me still to this date, though, Chief, that access control is not on every single door still in schools, which is like, why? Why isn't that a mandate?
Yeah. In Florida, just last year, bumped up our, the requirements for that. We've been locked classroom for a few years, but mandated by law. Now they've enhanced the access controls and stuff like that. So, it's and not only access control, but it needs to work interoperable, right? So if you have a panic button or whatever, if school goes in lockdown, then all this stuff should happen, without human involvement.
Yeah, I mean, I not to discredit my high school, but I went to Plano Senior High School here in Dallas, and it's an open campus, and we've got 4 or 5 different buildings, and you can literally walk up on campus. And there was one point probably a year or two ago where I just walked on campus and opened up the gym building because it was cracked open or there wasn't a lock, and I just walked in. But I could have been carrying something, I could have been done harm with someone. But that was the question I asked Ron Self again. He was the guy in the intro video. Like, securing open campus is fucking difficult, man. It's hard.
It's huge as hell. And to your point, like, we spent, it started when we first started, my average infrastructure was 33 years old when I took it over in 2015. Now it's improved. Obviously, we built some new schools and remodeled and stuff. But our schools back then were not built for, safety and security. So we've had to, move low-bearing walls to make these, secured festivals once school's, in session, push everybody through one single entry. What used to cost me maybe $200,000 now it's cost me $500,000-$600,000. But I spend $500,000-$600,000 to do that, or fence the property, which we've done and stuff, and I get one of the kids to leave a door open, and it's defeated everything. Hey, everybody calls you in, I'm running late. Can you pop a door for me? There is technology that if the door's ajar and stuff like that, but the real world is, especially in the K-12 world, you can't do all that. When I first started, I was more, I just literally had to prioritize what was my mission. And now eventually over the years, we're able to get some of those smaller things done. But, you'd love to be able to say, I'll push and honestly, every public and private school should have a basic minimum safety package,
Right.
access control and all this other stuff. And it's just not there.
Well, that was another point that Ron made was people or kids, staff coaches, kids are leaving out jarred doors and they have those little props in the door. And his office was full of them. He's like, anytime you see a prop, bring it to my office because we should never have props on a door, because they leave them open. But looks like we might got one more question here. From Jeff. I'll just feature it real quick as we wrap up here. Most parents in public really don't know the severity and frequency of threatening behavior that runs the gamut from the silly to the shocking. Just a comment.
Yeah. Every day, we got a lot of kids, and, the problem is, you and I could be sitting on a bus talking about gaming that we're doing, and we're talking about, whatever, a weapon we're using, and Jeff could be sitting 3 rows back. Here's us talking about a weapon, goes home, tells his parent. We get a lot of that, which is what we want. It's so funny. I've been asked by the media, well, how many threats, how many this, how many that? I really don't care. We keep track of all of it, but the more the merrier. I want that. I want them to say something. I want them to go home, preferably not 11 o'clock at night when they're going to bed, say something, but, preferably, tell a trusted adult so we can address it. It's hard. I love to, I've been said I got a crystal ball, but, and I'd love to be able to do stuff by osmosis, but, sometimes we need to know about it. And we've had some remarkable examples, which I can't go into detail on, but where kids have told us about things and we've injected, and some of them have been legit, I think we definitely have saved some lives, and we definitely have stopped some significant incidents.
There's always a fine balance too, Chief, when you put technology and safety security decisions in place, and then you have to evaluate that with ratings with schools sometimes. I know some ratings will affect enrollment with certain districts. Like if there's crime that happens at the school, then I'm not going to send my kid to that school, but I feel like what you're doing is you're vocal enough to say, hey, look, this is how we approach, this is what we're doing. You're transparent, you're accountable, you're building a culture that encourages parents to enroll in Seminole County, at least the impression I get.
Yeah, if you have a problem at school and you're not telling us about it, how are we going to fix it?
Exactly.
For people to underreport stuff, crimes, or significant, vaping, whatever the case may be, that's significant. If you're not reporting, we can't address it. And that's
Right.
one thing that and I know, at least in Seminole, that we've had those discussions over and over again. Let's just say how it is, and we'll fix it.
Yeah. Well, no, I love the transparency. You know that. I guess my last question here as we wrap up here at the top of the hour, so I appreciate it, Chief. But last question for me, man, as before we wrap up, I guess where do you see school safety and security heading in like the next 5 years, man? I know you hinted on it earlier about someone figuring this threat detection solution out or having this all in cart solution, but where do you see really safety and security heading for schools the next 5 years?
I think you'll see a few things. One, I think you'll see real empirical research that shows what works, what doesn't work. Technology, best practices, and stuff like that, like i.e. locking classroom doors. I think you'll see AI and machine learning and everything we do school safety technology wise. I think that'll be forefront. I think we'll see cutting edge weapons detection in all public schools. I think you'll see, and this is one of the problems that we had, especially early on, where, I think you'll lose all this disparate systems. Everything will be one simple, under one umbrella ecosystem. And those siloed. I think you'll see higher education change. I think you'll start seeing some things like locking classroom doors being seen in higher education. I think like Alyssa's law, I think you'll see that pass in every single state. And I think you'll just see some mandatory standards, not only public, but private schools when it comes to like that K-12 world, that, hey, this is, you have to have this if you're operating this type of situation. And lastly, and I kind of talked about this earlier, I think we're going to see some novel, unique idea or situations that happen when it comes to active threats. I used the example of a drone. Within 3 to 5 years, we're going to have a drone incident, unfortunately. And it's those unique, novel stuff that, we're trying to prepare for, but you never know until you face it.
One thing I'll add to your list there, great list, great counsel, is probably just the one thing I'll add is common sense. Hopefully people have common sense to make the right decisions, to say that politely or, diplomatically.
Yeah. And I think you'll see some accountability start to happen. I think,
Right.
You've seen a little bit in some of these, in Texas, you've seen a little bit of that happen. We tried it a little bit in Florida after one of our incidents. I think you will start seeing some of these, people who fail to act, especially law enforcement that's trusted to take care of the most vulnerable. If you're in that situation, you don't act, I think you're going to start seeing some accountability for that.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. Chief, I don't want to give out your personal information, but if people want to learn more about yourself and maybe learn from you, what's the best opportunity to do that?
LinkedIn, or send me a simple email to my sheriff's office at rfrance@seminolesheriff.org.
All right, here come all the vendors to give you sales pitches. Chief, thank you, my friend. I appreciate
Thank you, brother.
I appreciate you a lot. Guys and girls, this was Chief Rick Francis of Seminole County Sheriff's Office. Great guy to know, great guy to learn from. Please connect with him on LinkedIn. Next week, we're going to be heading to the healthcare sector to feature Daniel Henderson. We're going to the healthcare hospital industry. And if you guys have questions or comments about it, SVIP Live, make sure to send us a email at info@securityvip.net. I want to give a shout out again to our sponsors, Xbox. And you guys and girls, stay safe out there.
Thank you, Taylor.